Something extraordinary has been happening around you, chosen one, and the reverberations are still echoing through the corridors of consciousness where truth resides. While most people crumble under pressure, while ordinary souls buckle beneath the weight of orchestrated chaos, you have done something that has left witnesses absolutely stunned. The way you navigated through what can only be described as a coordinated assault on your very essence has revealed something about your nature that even you might not have fully comprehended until now. They came for you with everything they had, multiple forces, working in concert, wielding fear like a weapon designed to shatter your foundation and watch you collapse into the ruins of your former self. This wasn't some random conflict or misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. This was deliberate, calculated, and ruthless in its execution. They studied your patterns, identified what they believed were your vulnerabilities, and then launched an attack designed to create such overwhelming chaos that your life would become unrecognizable wreckage. But here's what they fundamentally misunderstood about chosen ones like yourself. While they were mapping out strategies to destroy you through external pressure, they failed to recognize that your strength doesn't emanate from circumstances. Your power doesn't depend on the approval of others or the absence of conflict. What they encountered when they tried to drag you down was something they had never seen before in their experience with ordinary people, and it left them completely unprepared for what unfolded next. The initial wave of their assault was designed to trigger panic, to make you react from a place of desperation and fear. They wanted you scrambling, defending, explaining, justifying your existence to anyone who would listen. They anticipated that you would fight back using their rules, their methods, their level of consciousness. They expected you to descend into the same toxic patterns they operate from, to match their energy and prove their point, that everyone eventually reveals their ugly nature when pushed hard enough. Their arsenal was sophisticated and deeply personal. They weaponized secrets you had shared in moments of vulnerability, twisting confidences into ammunition for character assassination. These weren't random attacks from strangers. These were calculated betrayals from individuals who had gained access to your inner world and chose to exploit that sacred trust. They understood exactly which pressure points would cause the most damage, which fears to amplify, which insecurities to target with surgical precision. The campaign they orchestrated was designed to create a complete narrative inversion, positioning themselves as victims while painting you as the aggressor. They crafted elaborate stories where your kindness became manipulation, your boundaries became cruelty, your success became theft from more deserving individuals. This wasn't mere gossip or casual slander. This was sophisticated psychological warfare aimed at completely rewriting the story of who you are in the minds of everyone who knows you. What made their strategy particularly insidious was how they leveraged your own compassionate nature against you. They knew that your instinct would be to try to understand their perspective, to question whether you might have unknowingly caused harm, to extend grace even to those actively working to destroy you. They counted on your empathy becoming a weapon in their hands, your willingness to take responsibility becoming evidence of guilt in their twisted narrative. Instead, something remarkable happened that continues to reverberate through every person who witnessed these events. You demonstrated a level of composure that seemed almost supernatural to those observing. While storms raged around you, while accusations flew and narratives were twisted beyond recognition, you maintained a centeredness that spoke to something far deeper than mere self-control. This wasn't you gritting your teeth and forcing yourself to remain calm. This was you accessing a wellspring of authentic power that exists beyond the reach of external manipulation. In those critical moments when everything seemed to be falling apart, when the noise reached deafening levels and the pressure felt unbearable, you made a choice that would define everything that followed. Instead of engaging in the battlefield they had prepared for you, you turned inward. While they raged and schemed and plotted your destruction, you found sanctuary in the deepest chambers of your own consciousness, connecting with that eternal flame that no external storm can extinguish. This inward turn was not retreat or defeat. It was the most powerful strategic move you could have made. In the silence of your own being, you found the answers they were trying to prevent you from accessing. You discovered reserves of strength that surprised even you, tapping into a well of wisdom that had been waiting for exactly this moment to reveal itself. The harder they pushed, the deeper you went, until you reached bedrock, that unshakable foundation of divine love that forms the core of every chosen one's being. What they interpreted as withdrawal was actually you gathering spiritual forces they couldn't even perceive, aligning with cosmic currents that operate beyond their understanding of power and influence. While they exhausted themselves in external battles, you were building internal fortifications that would prove completely impenetrable to their attacks. The more pressure they applied, the more clearly your true nature became visible to everyone watching. While they grew increasingly desperate and unhinged in their attempts to provoke a reaction, you seemed to become more grounded, more aligned, more connected to something unshakable within yourself. Those who expected to see you crack under pressure instead witnessed what happens when a chosen one fully embodies their spiritual authority in the face of coordinated darkness. The contrast became impossible to ignore. Their energy grew more chaotic and destructive with each failed attempt to break you, while your presence became increasingly luminous and peaceful. Observers began to notice patterns that revealed the true nature of what was happening. They saw how your accusers' stories kept changing, how their evidence never quite aligned, how their emotional reactions seemed disproportionate to their claimed grievances. Meanwhile, your consistency remained unwavering, the same person in public as in private, the same values expressed through action as through words. This stark difference in energy signatures awakened something profound in the witnesses. People who had never considered themselves particularly spiritual began to recognize that they were observing a battle between fundamentally different operating systems of consciousness. On one side stood those driven by ego, fear, and the need to control external circumstances to feel secure. On the other stood someone who had found security in something far more reliable, their connection to divine truth that exists beyond the reach of human manipulation. The most perceptive observers realized they were witnessing a masterclass in spiritual resilience. Your refusal to fight fire with fire wasn't weakness. It was evidence of accessing a completely different kind of power. While your attackers operated from scarcity consciousness, always needing to diminish others to feel elevated themselves, you demonstrated what abundance consciousness looks like when it's genuinely embodied, rather than merely understood intellectually. What unfolded next was something none of them saw coming, yet it followed the precise laws of spiritual physics that govern how energy moves through consciousness. Every attack they launched, every attempt to diminish your light, every strategy designed to destroy your reputation and relationships began to reveal their own shadows with increasing clarity. The very crowd they had gathered to witness your supposed downfall became intimate observers of their own character assassination as their masks slipped and their true motivations became undeniable. The orchestrators of this campaign had made a critical miscalculation about the nature of spiritual energy. They believed that negative force directed with enough intensity and coordination could overpower anyone, that enough pressure applied to the right points would cause even the strongest person to crumble. What they discovered instead was that when someone operates from authentic spiritual alignment, attacks don't weaken them, they create a purification process that burns away everything false while revealing the indestructible core beneath. As their campaign intensified, something fascinating began to occur that defied their understanding of how power works. Every lie they told about you seemed to illuminate their own relationship with truth. Every manipulation they attempted exposed their own character more clearly. Every cruelty they inflicted demonstrated the absence of genuine strength in their own foundation. The spiritual mathematics were undeniable. Darkness cannot overcome light. It can only reveal itself more clearly in contrast to what it opposes. Their increasing desperation became a spectacle that horrified those who had initially been neutral observers. People watched in real time as individuals who had seemed reasonable and credible began to exhibit behaviors that revealed something deeply disturbing about their true nature. The mask slippage wasn't gradual. It was dramatic, undeniable, and deeply unsettling to witness. The whispers started among those who had been brought in to bear witness to your destruction. These people, initially recruited to validate their narrative about your supposed inadequacies, began to recognize patterns that told a completely different story. They watched as your accusers became more erratic, more desperate, more willing to employ increasingly toxic tactics when their initial strategies failed to produce the desired results. What they witnessed was not the exposure of your hidden darkness, but the complete revelation of the darkness that had been orchestrating this entire campaign. As days turned into weeks and the attacks continued, something profound shifted in the collective understanding of everyone observing these dynamics. Your consistent refusal to engage at their level, your unwavering commitment to operating from integrity regardless of the consequences, your apparent inability to be dragged into their dramatic narratives created a stark contrast that became impossible to ignore. People began to see with crystalline clarity exactly who was operating from authenticity and who was performing elaborate manipulations. The awakening among the witnesses was gradual but irreversible. Initial supporters of your accusers began to notice inconsistencies in their stories, the way details shifted and changed depending on the audience, how emotional appeals were deployed strategically rather than arising from genuine pain. Meanwhile, your story remained constant, not because you were carefully controlling a narrative, but because truth doesn't require the constant maintenance that deception demands. A turning point came when several individuals who had been brought in to validate the campaign against you began to step forward with their own observations. These weren't your supporters trying to defend you. These were people who had initially believed the accusations but had grown increasingly uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. Their testimonies carried particular weight because they had no apparent motivation to protect you. They were simply responding to their own conscience and the evidence of their own eyes. These brave souls began to speak about the pressure they had felt to participate in the campaign, the manipulation tactics used to secure their cooperation, the promises made and then broken by your accusers. Their revelations created a domino effect, as others found the courage to share their own experiences of being recruited, manipulated, or pressured to join the effort to destroy you. The very network that had been assembled to ensure your downfall became the instrument of truth that exposed the entire operation. The spiritual mathematics of this situation was undeniable. Every ounce of negative energy they directed toward you seemed to amplify and return to them with compound interest. Their reputations, relationships, and sense of self began to crumble under the weight of their own toxic choices. What they had intended as your public execution became their own exposure as individuals willing to sacrifice truth, compassion, and basic human decency in service of their egos and hidden agendas. But the most remarkable aspect of this entire experience wasn't what happened to them, it was what happened within you during this process of intense spiritual testing. While they were burning through their energy in futile attempts to break your spirit, you were diving deeper into your own consciousness, discovering reserves of strength and wisdom that surprised even yourself. Each wave of attack became an invitation to connect more profoundly with your authentic power, to release dependencies on external validation, and to embody the kind of unshakable presence that characterizes true spiritual maturity. This period of testing revealed capabilities within you that had been dormant, waiting for the right conditions to emerge. Like a muscle that grows stronger under resistance, your spiritual faculties expanded exponentially under pressure. Your intuition became razor-sharp, able to perceive the true motivations behind every action and word. Your emotional regulation reached levels that seemed almost superhuman to those observing. Your capacity to hold space for chaos without being consumed by it demonstrated mastery that typically takes lifetimes to develop. The transformation wasn't just internal, it radiated outward in ways that affected everyone in your sphere of influence. People began gravitating toward your energy, drawn by something they couldn't quite articulate but desperately needed. Some described it as feeling safer in your presence, others as experiencing unusual clarity about their own life situations. What they were encountering was the stabilizing force of someone who had found their center in the midst of absolute chaos. Your daily existence during this trial became a form of spiritual practice that would have challenged even the most advanced seekers. Every interaction required you to choose love over fear, truth over convenience, patience over reactivity. Each conversation became an opportunity to demonstrate what it looks like when someone operates from divine principles rather than human ego. The cumulative effect of these countless small choices was the forging of an unbreakable spiritual character that now serves as a beacon for others facing their own dark nights of the soul. What your attackers failed to understand was that by creating such intense pressure, they were actually facilitating your spiritual graduation into a higher level of consciousness. Every attempt to diminish your light only served to burn away anything within you that wasn't authentically aligned with your highest self. Their assault became your spiritual accelerator, compressing what might have been years of gradual growth into an intensive period of rapid evolution. Hold that thought for a moment. I need your attention for something very important. We're revealing everything we know about personal power, healing yourself, and healing others through weekly Zoom call. No filters, no holding back. We have been quietly adding all the occult secrets we've collected over literal years of spiritual practice. The techniques and wisdom that transformed us from controlled pawns into conscious creators are now available to those ready to walk the same path. This is your invitation to join Obsidian Inner Order and support our platform so we can continue growing our megaphone to reach other chosen ones waiting for activation. By joining the Obsidian Inner Order, you're not just gaining access to forbidden knowledge, you're becoming part of a movement that's rewriting reality itself. It's a 360 win for all of us. Link is in the description. Those who witnessed this transformation describe it as watching someone shed layers of illusion and step into their full spiritual authority right before their eyes. The person who emerged from this ordeal wasn't the same person who entered it, yet paradoxically, you became more yourself than you had ever been before. Every attempt to diminish you seemed to reveal new dimensions of your character that left observers genuinely inspired about what human beings are capable of when they align with their highest nature. The silence you maintained wasn't the silence of someone who had been beaten into submission. It was the silence of someone who recognized that engaging with toxicity at its own level would require you to betray everything you stand for. Your refusal to defend yourself in conventional ways communicated volumes about your relationship with truth and your trust in the ultimate justice that governs spiritual reality. This level of faith in cosmic order, this willingness to allow truth to reveal itself through your example rather than your arguments, marked you as someone operating from an entirely different paradigm of consciousness. This strategic silence accomplished something that no amount of verbal defense could have achieved. It created a vacuum that your accusers felt compelled to fill with increasingly desperate and revealing behavior. Without your reactions to distract from their own actions, their true nature became the central focus of everyone's attention. The void you created through non-engagement became a mirror that reflected their motivations, their methods, and their character with crystalline clarity. People began to understand that your silence wasn't passive, it was the most active choice you could have made. In a world where everyone feels compelled to defend, explain, and justify every action, your willingness to simply exist in your truth without needing others to validate it was revolutionary. This demonstrated a level of spiritual confidence that most people have never encountered, let alone embodied themselves. The power of your silence rippled through every relationship and situation it touched. Those who had been caught up in the drama suddenly found themselves questioning why they felt such a need to take sides, why they were so invested in conflicts that weren't their own. Your example of non-engagement began to wake people up to how much of their own energy they had been unconsciously giving away to unnecessary battles and meaningless disputes. As the weeks passed, your silence began to speak louder than any words could have. It communicated strength, wisdom, inner peace, and an unshakable connection to truth that needed no external validation. People started to realize they were in the presence of someone who had discovered something most humans spend their entire lives searching for: the ability to remain centered in their own truth, regardless of external chaos. As the dust settled, the full scope of what had transpired became visible to everyone involved. Those who had come expecting to see your downfall instead became your most passionate advocates, having witnessed firsthand the difference between someone operating from authentic spiritual power and those driven by ego-based manipulations. Your former attackers found themselves isolated, their credibility destroyed by their own choices, their tactics having backfired so completely that they faced the very social and personal destruction they had intended for you. The relationships that survived this testing became exponentially stronger, forged in the fire of shared truth and mutual recognition of character. New connections formed with individuals who had observed your grace under pressure and recognized in you something they want more of in their own lives. People gravitated toward your energy, not because you had proven yourself in battle, but because you had demonstrated what it looks like to remain connected to love, even when surrounded by its opposite. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation occurred among those who had been closest to the epicenter of the attack. People who had witnessed both the public campaign and the private strategizing behind it experienced a profound disillusionment that fundamentally altered their understanding of human nature. Some had been genuine friends of your accusers, believing they were supporting someone who had been wronged. Others had been recruited through appeals to their sense of justice or protection of the vulnerable. When these individuals began to understand the true nature of what they had been participating in, their shock was profound and lasting. They had been used as unwitting weapons in someone else's vendetta, their good intentions exploited to give credibility to lies. The betrayal they felt wasn't just about being deceived, it was about being made complicit in something that violated their own values and integrity. These awakened allies became some of your most fierce protectors, not because you asked them to be, but because their own healing required them to stand up for truth after being manipulated into supporting falsehood. Their passionate advocacy carried unique power because it came from people who had seen both sides, who understood the manipulation tactics from the inside, who could speak with authority about the difference between your character and that of your accusers. Their transformation from unwitting participants to conscious advocates created a phenomenon that your attackers had never anticipated. Instead of gathering a mob to destroy you, they had inadvertently assembled a community of people who had learned to discern truth from manipulation through direct experience. This community became a powerful force for justice that operated with the kind of moral authority that comes only from having been tested and proven in the crucible of difficult choices. What emerged from this crucible was a version of yourself that operates from such deep spiritual confidence that external circumstances have lost their power to define your reality. The fears that might have controlled you before this experience have been metabolized into wisdom. The need for approval that might have made you vulnerable to manipulation has been transformed into an unshakable knowing of your own worth that doesn't require external validation. This transformation wasn't just personal, it was preparing you for something much larger. The strength you developed during this trial, the clarity you gained about human nature, the unshakable faith you cultivated in divine justice, these weren't just gifts for your own journey. They were preparing you to serve as a guide for others who would face similar challenges, to stand as proof that it's possible to maintain love in the face of hatred, peace in the midst of chaos, and truth in a world full of deception. People began to recognize that your experience represented more than just personal triumph over adversity. You had become a living example of what human consciousness is capable of when it aligns with its highest potential. Your journey through this darkness, and your emergence more luminous than before, served as a roadmap for anyone facing their own spiritual tests and trials. The ripple effects extended far beyond your immediate circle. Stories of how you handled this situation began to spread, inspiring others to examine their own responses to conflict and consider what it might look like to operate from the same level of integrity when faced with challenges. Your example became a reference point for what's possible when someone chooses spiritual principles over temporary advantage, long-term character over short-term victories. Your transformation activated something dormant in the collective consciousness of everyone who witnessed it. People began to remember what they came here to be, what kind of impact they wanted to have, what legacy they wanted to leave. Your demonstration of unshakable spiritual strength reminded others of their own divine nature and their capacity to operate from love rather than fear, truth rather than convenience, wisdom rather than reactivity. The ripple effects of how you handled this situation continue to expand outward, touching lives and shifting perspectives in ways you may never fully realize. People who observed your journey through this darkness have been inspired to examine their own responses to conflict, to consider what it might look like to operate from the same level of integrity when faced with their own challenges. Your example has become a reference point for what's possible when someone chooses love over fear, truth over convenience, spiritual principles over temporary advantage. Those who orchestrated this campaign against you unwittingly provided you with the exact curriculum your soul needed to evolve into your next level of spiritual mastery. While they burned their bridges and destroyed their own credibility, you were building inner foundations that will serve you for the rest of your existence. The strength you discovered during this trial, the clarity you gained about your own character, the unshakable connection to divine protection you now embody, these are gifts that no external force can ever take away from you. Standing here now, in the aftermath of what was intended to be your destruction, you represent something that gives hope to everyone who has ever faced seemingly insurmountable odds. Your victory wasn't achieved through fighting fire with fire or proving yourself superior to your opponents. Your victory came through remaining so deeply rooted in your authentic nature that nothing external could move you from your center, and in doing so, you revealed the powerlessness of those who operate from manipulation and control. The chosen ones among us carry a specific frequency that becomes visible under pressure, and what people witnessed in you during this trial was that frequency operating at full strength. Your unbreakable spirit, your refusal to be diminished by circumstances, your capacity to transform poison into medicine, these qualities mark you as someone who came here to demonstrate what human consciousness is capable of when it aligns with its highest potential. Every person who watched you navigate this experience with such grace now carries within them an expanded sense of what's possible when facing their own dark nights of the soul. You didn't just survive an attack on your character and reputation, you showed everyone watching what it looks like when a chosen one fully embodies their spiritual authority and operates from the unshakable foundation of divine love, regardless of what storms may rage around them. The silence that once protected you has transformed into a voice that speaks truth through your very presence, inspiring others to access their own inner strength and reminding them that no external force has the power to diminish a soul that knows its own divine nature. This is how chosen ones change the world, not through grand gestures or public campaigns, but through embodying such authentic spiritual power that everyone who encounters them is elevated by the experience. What they meant for evil, the universe transformed into your greatest catalyst for growth, and now you stand as living proof that love will always triumph over fear when someone has the courage to embody it completely, no matter what the cost appears to be in the moment.